O God, my heart is fixed. I will sing and give praise, even with my glory. Awake, psaltery, and harp. I myself will awake early. I will praise thee, O Lord, among the people, and I will sing praises unto thee among the nations. For thy mercy is great above the heavens, and thy truth reacheth unto the clouds. Be thou exalted, O God, above the heavens, and thy glory above all the earth. That thy beloved may be delivered, save with thy right hand, and answer me. God hath spoken in his holiness. I will rejoice. I will divide Shechem, and met out the valley of Succoth. Gilead is mine, Manasseh is mine, and Ephraim also is the strength of mine head. Judah is my lawgiver. Moab is my washpot. Over Edom will I cast out my shoe. Over Philistia will I triumph. Who will bring me into the strong city? Who will lead me into Edom? Wilt not thou, O God, who hast cast us off? And wilt not thou, O God, go forth with our hosts? Give us help from trouble, for vain is the help of man. Through God we shall do valiantly, for it is he that shall tread down our enemies. I was reading different accounts of Scripture this week and came across this psalm, and I thought to myself, this is the song, this is the testimony of somebody that is living on the winning side, or somebody that has victory in their life. I would say that. I know David has some psalms where he goes a little bit deeper and he has some troubles and trials, but I think Psalm 108 is a song where, watch this, he is singing the victor's song. This psalm, it begins with God and it ends with God, and all points in between, he's praising God. And you say, well, what do you mean by that? I mean that it's a song of victory, and I think it's a good thing for us to give praise unto the Lord. I think it's a good thing to give a testimony of God's goodness, to be a voice, to be a light, to be an instrument of what God is doing. I was thinking about this as I was reading this. David is sitting here and he's telling us that his heart is fixed. That's a very interesting statement. We'll look a little bit more at it maybe here in just a moment. But with that idea, I want you to think about this. If his heart is fixed, that means that he's not wavering in what he believes. He's not going to waver. That's why over in the New Testament it says, don't be tossed to and fro about with every wind of doctrine. I think there's I'm going to stay on the positive end of this because I don't want to be negative tonight. I want to be positive. And I'm going to be positive. I'm not going to say that. I'm going to stay true to this. But I think there's a lot of people today that waver and are just for a lack of better terms, they're wishy-washy. They're weak. They're here one minute and they're there the next minute, and you don't know where they are the next minute. I was watching, I know it's going to sound silly, but I was watching a butterfly today, and I was thinking about this. That butterfly was all over the place. Now, I know it had a purpose and it was looking for food, but I thought, boy, there's a lot of people like that butterfly. They're just all over the place. There's no consistency. They're wavering. Watch this. David is saying this. His heart is fixed. Watch this. He's not wayward. He's not wayward. In other words, he's not backslidden. I think there's a lot of people today that name the name of Christ, and they're just backslidden Christians. Their heart is cold, they're miserable, they're unhappy, and watch this. Some of them are out of church, and some of them are in the church, but they've got a wayward heart. I don't know how much time how much time it would take for somebody to be with the Lord and read about the Lord and pray about Christ and see some things in the Bible and not have a sense of joy or have a little bit of excitement in their life. I'm starting to think that there's some folks that are just absolutely miserable in their lives, and the reason they're miserable is because they're wayward. They're out of the will of God. That leads me to this. His heart is fixed. You won't be weak if your heart is fixed. You won't be weak. You see, a strong heart is strength. A heart that is set, a heart that is fixed, You have strength. Why? Because you know who you believed in. You have a sense of purpose. You have a desire. You have a drive. You are absolutely set on living for Christ. There's no weakness in there. And then watch this. This psalmist's heart is not. He's not looking for anything. In other words, he doesn't have a willful heart that is willing to be drawn away or pulled aside from everything that the world has to offer. No, his heart is fixed, and he is absolutely set on serving the Lord. Now watch this. Here he again, and we're going to get to the message in just a moment. I like this. The psalmist, he's got a fixed heart, and with this, watch this. It comes. He's filled. This, you can't write a psalm like this unless you're filled with the Spirit of God, unless you're filled with the presence of God, unless you're, watch this. And if you're filled here, and I'm filled tonight with the Lord, watch this. Here's what's going to happen. I'm going to be obedient. When I am disobedient, that means that there is something else in here with me. If this cup was filled to the brim with water, there's nothing else can get in there. In other words, that cup is totally obedient to the fullness of what it's designed for. When I am wrestling with the world, and I'm wrestling with my flesh, and I'm allowing everything else to come into my mind, and all the other things to occupy my time, watch this. I am not completely obedient to Christ. And here he is. He's saying, I'm filled. I'm obedient. And with that obedience comes this. I think there's a sense of determination that Christians need to have. If your heart is fixed, there's going to be a determination in your life. You see, I know that it's God's will for us to surrender our lives to Him. I know that it's God's will for us to serve Him. I know that it's God's will for me to walk with Him. I know that it's God's will for me to read my Bible. And I know it's God's will to pray and be in the house of God. I understand all that. But watch this. There has to come a sense of determination on my part where I put that into practice. Something else can be vying for my time. I know this because we've all been through the same amount of time since Sunday, and every one of us has made choices and made decisions based on what we're going to do with our time. And if we are not determined to set aside some time for God, guess what? Something else will fill that time. And so we have to be determined, and watch this. There comes an obligation or a dedication. When your heart is fixed, in other words, you are steadfast and you are ready, then you have decided with a sense of dedication and a sense of purpose that you're going to live for the Lord. This comes with a devotion. If you love something or someone, you're going to be devoted to them. Simple. We have our things, we have our objects, we have our people, we have our devices, whatever you want to call them. And we're devoted to making them look good or look bad or whatever it is, but there's a devotion. If my heart is fixed for the Lord, then I'm going to have a sense of devotion toward Him. I'm going to be devoted to Him. And there's going to be a desire for me to know Him. There's going to be a desire there. So David is writing these things, and he's telling us these things, and he gives us this idea. Now watch this. Don't miss this. In this psalm, just a few verses, 13 verses, only a heart that is fixed and one that is established like that, an established soul, watch this, can really be a help in any true work for God. If you want to see God use you, then your heart is going to have to be fixed. It's going to have to be fixed for him. Now, that doesn't mean, listen, I've said it before and I'll say it again. It does not mean that you can't do other things. It does not mean that you can't have pastimes or hobbies or all of that. No, no, no. God doesn't say that. The Bible doesn't say that. This psalm doesn't say that. This preacher is not saying that. But what I am saying is this. My devotion and my heart needs to be fixed for the Lord first. And on him first. See, I've got to get the right perspective. It's Jesus Christ. And everything I do for the glory of God. I've got to have the right perspective. I've got to have the right perception. Did you notice in this psalm, and we'll get there in just a moment, he talks about the holiness of God. I believe each week that goes by, each month that goes by, the holiness of God is under attack. And I believe it's under attack, watch this, in our churches. Man has absolutely brought anything and everything into the house of God. And we've brought the holiness and the separation and just the glory of God. We've brought it down. I know that it can be good, but I also have to wonder what's the motive behind some of this stuff. When you have to have 7 service times to meet the needs of all the different types of people, friend, there's something wrong there. That's not evangelism. When you got to have a coffee break in between services and adjust the lights and adjust what, friend, you know what's happened? The holiness of God God hasn't changed. He expects us to worship him. He expects us to glorify him in spirit and in truth. He expects us to set a day aside that's his day. And we do everything and anything on that day except glorify God. And you say, what do you mean? See, our perception is this. It's okay. Because the world's doing it, and everybody else is doing it, and slowly and more slowly and just ebbing away. I don't think it's slowly anymore. I think it's just a flood now. That all of that stuff has been brought into the church. I got tickled at my granddaughter, Miss Gemma. We were talking about the Lord yesterday and talking about Easter and what it really stood for. And what did she say to me? She said, you need to get up and pretend that you're Easter Claus. She said, we can get it all in one day. I said, but then you'll miss out on a day of presents. She said, no, we can have it twice a year. You can just be Easter Claus. And we were joking about it, but that's exactly what it is. Our perspective and our perception and our priorities, and it should come down to the precepts of God's word. David is saying here, my heart is fixed. And he goes on to talk about giving praise and glory and joy and rejoicing and singing unto the Lord. He mentions the holiness of God. Watch this. A soul that has their heart fixed on God, that soul's going to be thrilled. It's going to be thrilled. You're either going to be happy in the Lord, or you're going to have the joy of the Lord, or you're going to have the shallowness of the world. You ever heard somebody say something? Oh, boy, that just thrilled my soul. Oh, that was thrilling. That means it did something to you. If it was thrilling, normally we talk about it being like a scary thing or something to get your emotions up or your adrenaline up. It ought to be a thrill for us to serve the Lord. We ought to come to the house of God with a sense of expectation and anticipation and excitement. Here he is, watch this. He's comforted in this presence. He's challenged in his presence. Why? Because he talks about mercy and grace. In verse 4, for thy mercy is great above the heavens, and thy truth reacheth under the clouds. Am I excited about the mercy of God? Am I excited about the grace of God? Or have I just let things just wear me down so much and just drip, 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 drip until it's just kind of softened everything? And I'm no longer, my heart might be fixed, but it might be fixed in the wrong directions. Let me give you this, and it will get right to the message. David prays this. He prays that in every conflict and in every situation that he may know that God is leading him, and that and in doing that he'll know that his conquest is sure. So here it is. Here's the message. Number one, I've been all over this, and I'll go ahead and give it to you again. A fixed heart. He says, "Oh God." Now, I've got to stop there because I want you to understand something. I don't have to tell you my heart is fixed. You don't have to tell me your heart is fixed. But I do have to tell him because he knows. And by the way, he knows. I can sit here tonight and say, "Oh God, my heart is fixed." And he'll say, "No, you've loved me with your mouth, but your heart is far from me. You've made a testimony to the people, but your heart is far from me." So what does this mean? Well, a fixed heart is a heart that's steadfast. Steadfast. I would dare say that David, go back and read some of his other Psalms when he was running for his life from Saul and his other enemies, when he didn't know whether he was going to be alive one moment or the next. You know what he did? He had a steadfast heart for God. He had a steadfast heart for God. Watch this. This fixed position was sure. What do you mean? There's a term, and I don't know if we use it anymore or not, but you want to make something sure. In other words, you want to make it solid. You want to make sure that you want to make sure that it's there. I'm going to make this as sure as I can. In other words, you're going to try to make it as perfect, as real, as strong as you can be. You know what David's saying? My heart is fixed. He's saying, my heart is sure. I know who I've trusted in. I know who I'm praying to. I know who I'm singing to. And it's based off of what God has done and not what David has done. And then, with this fixed heart, he's strengthened. The enemy is still there. The trials are still there. The struggles are still there. The temptations are still there. But if my heart is fixed the way it should be, I'm going to be strengthened in the Lord and not unto man. So here, the first one is strength, fixed. Let me give you this one. Look at verse 3. He says, I will praise thee, O Lord, among the people, and I will sing praises unto thee among the nations. Two different groups of people there. He says, I'm going to sing, I'm going to praise you here, or I'm going to sing, verse 3, I'm going to praise you right here, but I'm going to sing so that the whole world's going to know. You say, what is that? That's a fervent servant or a helper. And he's not talking about God helping him. He's talking about himself having a sense of fervency. The effectual what? Fervent prayer of a righteous man availeth much. I really am not interested in fake sensationalism or emotionalism. But boy, we can get worked up over some things, can't we? We can. And we can let that out and let people know where we stand, or we'll let them know that we were happy about it, or upset over it, or hurt by it. We show it. We should be given testimonies of what God has done. There should be a sense of fervency. You say, where do you go? What do you mean by that? There's a sense of commitment. A commitment to the Lord. Look what he says there. I will praise thee, O Lord, among the people. He's not ashamed to say he's a Christian. Well, he's not a Christian here. He's not ashamed to say he believes in God. He's not ashamed to have a testimony. He's not ashamed to let his family know where he stands. There's a consecration here. I believe we need that. I believe we need that in our homes and in our lives. I need that in my life. I need a sense of consecration to the Lord. Why? Because there's a cause. There's lost people dying and going to hell. There's Christians that need somebody to come alongside them and encourage them in the Lord. So there's a fixed heart. There's a fervent helper. Watch this. There's a fearfulness of the holiness. A fearful holiness, if you would, in verse 7. God has spoken in his holiness. And as a result of that, what does he do? He says, God has spoken in his holiness. I will rejoice. I will rejoice. This holiness that David is going to praise, and this attribute of God, he understands that it's not been soiled by man. And that's where unsullied is the word I've got written down here. Believe it or not, I found that word so that it would match with the other U's that I've got. And I thought, look at you coming up with this word unsullied in the old thesaurus. Not soiled. You know what I've done? I've soiled or brought down the holiness of God so that maybe it would be more palatable to people. No, God is holy. It's uncorrupt. The holiness of God is uncorrupt. Man is corrupt. But God is not. But watch this. God's holiness, to me, one of the greatest things about it is it's unexplainable. I can read about it. I can close my eyes and try to imagine what that means, those words, those places in the Bible to talk about the holiness of God. But I just can't fully grasp it because it's so far above me. But wait a minute. That doesn't mean that I still don't give him a reverential fear and respect and a sense of awe and worship for who he is. And then, last of all, is found in verse 11. Wilt not thou, O God, who hast cast us off, and wilt not thou, O God, go forth with our host? You see, there's a fighting spirit here. And it's not David that's doing the fighting. David is referring back to God who's going to do the battle. And with that, watch this. David is resting on what you and I are resting in. A promise. I keep coming back to this, and I keep thinking about Sunday and the resurrection. I just keep coming back to the promise. We have a promise. Do you know what that empty tomb represents? A promise. David says, I'm gonna trust in your word. You have said this, so therefore I'm trusting in it, realizing that you are the victor, you are the conqueror, and so there's a promise there. And with the promise is only as good as the person who spoke it. So there's power there. David himself, being the king, could only have so much weight in his word. Did everybody always fear David. Now, not everybody always feared God either, but God is the only one who said, I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. I am the Amen. I'm the author and finisher. So there's a promise, there's power, but watch this. There's a preeminence. In what? And this is where we'll end. In the person of God. In the person of God. You know who we trust in tonight? We trust in the finished work, the completed work, the sure work of Jesus Christ. In his death, burial, and resurrection. And in all that, we have our own victor song. David writes this in 13 verses. How much more can we testify to what David said? How much more can we add to that? I would say there's volumes if we would just truly let ourselves see Christ.